Okay, guys, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Yeah, I'm planning to conduct an exam next week, most likely on Friday. I think it will be on Friday. And the syllabus will be like whatever we had and the syllabus, whatever we had in the last exam. After that, whatever we have discussed, I think. Yeah. So this typical set and other things. Okay. After that, whatever we have discussed, like all the codings, like the Hoffman code and this prefix code and this channel coding theorem and yeah, this kind of stuff. So whatever we discussed before, so whatever we had in the exam last time, except that, okay, whatever we discussed, that will be the part of the exam. Yeah, and yes, that will be next Friday. And I'll be conducting also a Viva, most likely first on the first week of April. Okay, so I'll let you know the date, but it will be in April. Maybe say I think the first April is like Thursday. Most likely first of April, I'll conduct the Viva. Yeah. Any other questions you have? No. Okay. So last day we proved two interesting theorems about a bound. Okay. For the probability of error. Okay. So yeah. So if we have like an input
Sir,
random variable. Yes.
sir, there is a one question, sir. Row sum of a general matrix may be more than one.
More than one.
So, row sum of general matrix, can it be more than one?
This is what it is, right? This is what we call the channel matrix. So yeah. Let me just check. Row sum, you said, right?
Yes,
I
sir.
think, yeah, I
Column
think it
sum
is. Yeah, I think it is possible.
Yes, sir. I think it can be.
Yeah, it's possible. Okay, there is another matrix. Okay, I think I did not talk about it, which is row stochastic, or you can say the row sum is one, which is called. I mean, okay, so I mean there is a little bit of confusion between which one is channel matrix, which one is called this transition probability matrix. Transition probability matrix means, okay, let me just write it down. XY. So this transition probabilities, right? This is y given x. Okay, so x here is the generic variable and y is the generic variable here in the right hand side. Then you can always write a matrix. Okay, let's say so x1, x2, let's say whatever, some number. I think I started a1, a2 anyway. So if we write it like that, so let's say here it is y1, y2, some yj, and then this will be the probability of y1 given x1 dot probability of y1 yj given x1 and so on. So this is a row stochastic matrix, means sum of the row entries is one for each row. Okay, so yeah, but basically it is following from this, right? So if we have these things, suppose these are the source letters or source symbols, then yeah. So you just get all these probabilities. So let's say this is x1, and these are like y1, y2 dot some yj. Then Yeah, so if you take probability of this, so x1 here is fixed. So yeah, so x1 will go somewhere else. Like x1, the output of x1 will be some one of this y1, y2, yj. So the probable sum of this will be equal to 1. So this is a row stochastic matrix, and this is called, okay, let me just write it down first. So y1 given xk, and this probability of, let's say, y j given xk. So it is like the transpose of the other matrix, okay, the channel matrix. So yeah, here it is, you can say it is a row stochastic. This is a row stochastic matrix. And this matrix is called transition probability matrix. Sometimes it is also called channel transition probability matrix, because the channel probability is they define the channel, right? So it is also called channel transition probability matrix. I mean probability, yeah. So probability matrix. This will play a big role if you consider like your source, a Markov chain, and other things. So which we are not considering right now. So we have just a memoryless source, which is let's simpler compared to, or not simpler, but maybe simple compared to other things, Markov chain, or yeah. So Markov chain is with memory, right? So here the output depends only on the input, but not on the history of all the inputs, right? So yeah, so this is also called channel transition probability matrix, and some people also will call this matrix as a channel matrix also. Okay, so it doesn't matter. So I mean, if I give you any questions, so there will not be any bit of confusion like which one is channel matrix. I mean, I'll not give this kind of a question where there will be a bit of confusion. Okay, so but this is a nice thing, meaning if I just give you a row stochastic, this is a basically row stochastic matrix. So this is actually a very, I mean, row stochastic matrix, meaning, I mean, if you look at linear algebra, so this is like a non-negative matrix, meaning each entry is non-negative and row sum is 1. So, and this is a very rich, I mean, this matrix has a very rich structure, and people have studied this matrix and properties of this matrix in great details. Okay, so this is a very nice matrix, and you will find a lot of literature on this kind of a matrix. And in fact, if you go into the details of like network information or maybe information theory at an advanced level, advanced than this one, whatever we're doing, there you'll see like if you have this matrix, for example, you want to decompose this matrix, or let's say, yeah, so suppose decomposition means, I mean, if you have studied this, if you have a math background, probably that there is something called singular value decomposition. Okay, so you can always write a matrix as some unitary matrix times some matrix like this, say block matrix like this. So here it will be 0, 0, and here it will be a diagonal matrix. We'll call it sigma. And then here is, this is some B, let's say, some B transpose, let's say, suppose A is a real matrix. So here, for example, A could be a channel matrix. And then it will have this kind of a decomposition, which is called SVD, singular decomposition. And then there will be nice interpretations of the channel using this kind of a decomposition. I mean, you see that something called, yeah. So the information which the, I mean, the information which is hidden in this matrix, okay, that may be redundant. Redundant means maybe there is a column vector here or the row vector here, okay, which depends on other rows. Okay, so there is some amount of redundancy, but you can get rid of that redundancy using this kind of a decomposition. I mean, there is a lot of mathematics based on this kind of a tool like singular value decomposition. I mean, if you are interested, you can look at it. So, I mean, yeah. Okay, so so last day we had discussed two very interesting theorems, okay, which actually give you a bound about this probability of error. And I think the first one was something like, I don't know, where is it? So this is that. Where is it? Okay, maybe on the top.
One more question. Sir, in binary code, we can check optimality with the help of Hopman code. Okay. And suppose if you have ternary code, then sir, what is the criteria to check optimality code?
That's a very good question. That's a nice question. Just let me answer that. But before that, I mean, I was thinking something, right? Okay. Oh, okay. I was talking about two nice theorems. Okay. So let me. Where is it? Is it deleted? Where is that? Is it deleted? I don't know. Okay, even if it is deleted, you can watch it. I mean, you can see it in the video, lecture video. Where is the theorem? I don't know. Oops. How it got deleted? Anyway, maybe I will repeat that. Yeah, before I answer that question, so your question is how to check whether it is this thing is optimal or not. That's a very nice question. Okay, and the thing is Hoffman. Yeah.
Sir, we have to construct a ternary Hofmann code or something else criteria to check.
No, Hoffman code is always optimal. This is the property. This is, I mean, when we proved it, we proved 2-3 things. Like we proved two, I think three
so my
small
question
theorems,
is that,
small results.
Sir, my question is that can we construct a ternary Hofmann code?
Yeah. You can consider any number of like suppose your source alphabet in terms of 0, 1. It could be any up to D, and all the results we proved. You'll see that. I mean, if we just look back, we'll see that we can have D symbols. Doesn't matter. So D equal to 2, then we have something. But I mean, if you, then we have a very nice bound about this entropy, which I mean about this what is called which is bounded by the entropy. I mean the average expected length, right? Yeah. So yeah. So here it is. So yeah. So here whatever we have proved here, all these things. There we have D actually. So number of symbols could be anything. The number of symbols. If you just see the source coding theorems, where are those? What is the statement? What is the statement of this theorem? This is the algorithm for the Hoffman code, but before that we proved that it is optimal. Yeah, so this is what we discussed, that we reduce the problem. Semblance is that, okay. Here we have no, so D equal to, yeah, this is a special case on D equal to 2. But these theorems here, this could be any D. Like, yeah, for example, here you see, so this could be any D. So D equal to 2, then we have a nice representation. Here you see log D, anything. So whatever we have proved, so it is for actually any number of source, not source, but the what is called code alphabet or code letters. Okay, like 0, 1, you can have 0, 1, 2 also. So all these theorems, whatever we have proved, you see everywhere it is log D. D is the number of, you can say, code symbols or code letters. Okay, so it is for D. So it is anything. So yeah, so it is. So this is optimal for any number of code alphabets, or you can say code letters. So, but specifically focused on after proving all these theorems, we said, okay, if D, for example, here if you, so these are all base 2, let's say. So if you D is equal to 2, then it is 1. So we have a nice meaning of a nice formula for this and nothing else. Okay, but it is valid. I mean, this code is optimal for all D. And yeah, so the definition, if you look at the definition of optimal, okay, so for example, what we said is the Hoffman code is optimal. We prove that the Hoffman code is optimal. Optimal meaning you can have no other code. Okay, no other code means code is nothing but a set of code words corresponding to each of these symbols, source symbols or source letters. So you cannot have, so Hoffman code is an optimal code, meaning that this expected length, whatever we have calculated, okay, so the minimum, the expected length, okay, for the Hoffman code, okay. I mean, you cannot have any other code for which the average code word length is less than the average code word length for Hoffman code. So Hoffman code is optimal. It cannot be less than that. Okay. Now the question is, if I give you a new code, I give you a method okay, of a new code. Like I give you a method to construct a prefix code, let's say. Okay, so you generate a code. Then the question is how to test whether it is optimal or not. Okay, for example. So then you have to prove this kind of theorems. That is one way to do it, like the way we have proved it. And you have to show that this bound always can be obtained. I mean, it can go below that, less than that, the lower bound. It can go below that, less than that. That is one thing. And second thing is you can pick a particular example, whatever is the question. You can, like, let's say I give you a probability distribution for all the source symbols, okay, and then I ask you to generate a code, and then I ask you to test whether this is optimal or not. Then what you can possibly do is you can generate the Hopman code corresponding to that probability distribution. You can check whether the you can find out first the average code or length for the Hopman code, and then you can calculate the average code word length for the code of the question, like what is the code given in the question. For example, Shannon-Fano coding, whatever I gave in the assignment. Okay, and if you check that, okay, the average code word length is bigger than, let's say, the average code word length for the Hopman code, then it means it is not optimal, because Hopman code is optimal. Okay, so that way you can show. In fact, you will see that this is only the optimal code, Hopman code. I mean, I'm telling you the answer. Then you have to justify that. That means you have to produce, okay, an example where you will see that the average code or length is not less than the average code or length of the Hopman code. So Hopman code is optimal, but that is not optimal. That means there is another way of a code whose average code word length is less than the given one. Okay, the given one means the question, given code, the given formula of the code, which is there in the question. Okay, so yeah, then it is not optimal. There's another way to look at it. Did I make any sense?
Sir, actually, the one way is like given a probability distribution, we will construct a Hoffman code and then look at the entropy. And if the given code, the average length is greater than that, that means it is not optimal, right? And what is the other way? Can you please tell that again?
No, you don't have to calculate entropy. What I'm saying is, you first calculate the average code word length. You first construct the Hopman code. Hopman code you first construct and then see what is the average code word length. Okay. And now for other code which is in the question, let's say, you also calculate the corresponding code and find out its average code word length and check which one is smaller. Because Hopman code is optimal, you already know. So then only chance is that it will be equal to the code word length for the Hopman code. The code word length, the average code word length for the question, for the code which is in the question, that can be bigger equal to the code word length, the average code word length of the Hopman code, right? If it is not equal, if it is bigger than, then of course that is not optimal. This is what I said.
Yes, sir. That's clear.
Yeah. Okay, I think just a minute. Can you see the screen?
No, sir.
Okay, I think just a minute. Where is that? Yeah, I mean, this is nice. I mean, if you have interest, you can read more about it. I mean, this is very nice. Okay, so
Sir, actually, I have one more doubt.
Do you see it now?
Yes, sir. It is visible.
Okay, yeah. Go ahead.
So actually, in the assignment, there is a question about the Shannon-Fano's coding schema. In that, we have to do the coding in 0, 1, right? Because it is not mentioned. Like we have to do
0, 1,
binary
0,
or
1.
generate. Okay.
Yes, 0, 1, 0. Yeah.
Okay, sir.
So whenever it is not mentioned, you may assume that it is 0, 1. Okay, that's why it is not mentioned. Because this is what we did, but we proved some theorem which is valid also for any number of code alphabets, but otherwise it is always the binary code. And this is what we are discussing in this course. Everything is binary. Okay, any other thing?
Sir, any other criteria than
How
Hofmann
it
code?
got deleted, I don't know. Huh? What is that?
Sir, one way to which we can check optimality with the help of Hofmann code. So
Yeah.
is there any other criteria to check optimality of a code?
No, I don't think so. See, I mean, this is a very big problem actually. So problem is, suppose I give you a method, okay, for some coding, okay. So I give you a method. Now you have to test whether this is optimal or not. That means what do you have to actually show? You have to show that there cannot exist any other code, okay, whose average codal length is less than the given one. Okay. Then you have to prove theorem. That is the only way to do it, right? So then you have to prove that, okay, let us assume that there is another code, okay, then if you assume that, then you have to reach to a contradiction. There's a mathematical way of doing it, okay. Otherwise, whatever you can do is what I said, like you can of course compute the Hoffman code and you can check whether it is bigger. I mean, what is bigger than the average codal length of Hoffman code or not. But I mean, most of the codes are not optimal, whatever I will be discussing, except the Hoffman. I mean, this is, I'm just telling you, but if you want to show, if I want to show that it is not optimal, then I can of course produce an example and check. Otherwise, if it is optimal, then I can prove it. But if it's not optimal, it is enough to give a counter example. Right? This is how mathematics works. But if something is true, then you have to prove it. And if something is false, if you want to justify that something is false, then just you have to produce only one example. That is enough. Okay, so yeah.
Sir, actually, we learned about two coding scheme. One is this Shannon-Fano code, and another one is the
No,
Hoffman.
Shannon-Fano code actually I did not discuss in this course. I gave it as an assignment because there is no time. I mean, we can discuss many. I mean, there are many codes, but I will not be able to discuss that due to. I mean, okay, I can discuss that. The problem is, even if I don't discuss, you can learn this. If you know only one code, like how it works, how it is done, then you can learn by yourself. So everything need not be discussed. So that's why I don't have time also to discuss all other codes. So there are a lot of techniques.
So,
Yeah.
like when we were like we discussed this roughly, I think, when we were constructing the when we were proving something about
Oh, I forgot. Anyway, maybe I said, but I forgot. Anyway, yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. Yes, I asked me.
and
Yeah.
like when we were trying to we were trying to find nks using probability, and then uh, make a tree out of it. That is the same as the Shannon-Fano code, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, like, I have a doubt. Like, is there any comparison between these two coding schemes? Like, do we have a surety like when the Hoffman code and this code will be like
Will be the
having
same
same
code. Yeah, yeah.
average length, same average length?
I don't. I mean, I don't think there is such a thing in general. In general, and in general, what I mean is, like for any kind of, I mean, there is no characterization. Like if your probability distribution is like that, I mean, like that means, I mean, probably suppose P1, P2, Pk. Okay, there are k source symbols and the probabilities are like that. Then all it will be equal, otherwise not be equal. I don't think there is such a characterization. Maybe for some special cases it is there, but not in general.
Okay, sir.
Yeah. Okay. Another thing, what you say, because we are discussing this. Oh, I think I don't find it. I mean, whatever I did last day, I don't know why is it not there. All the error bounds, whatever we have proved, I don't see it here.
Sir, if the average code length is equal to the entropy, then we don't need to check for optimality, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Because then because for optimal code it is always there. Yeah. I mean, but you have to prove that it is for all P1. So you have to prove it as a theorem, like for all P1, P2, Pk. Like for a particular P1, P2, Pk, if it is the case, then you cannot say that method is optimal. For that particular problem, it is optimal. For that
No,
particular
so for
problem,
that problem, that code is optimal.
then it is in general P1, P2, Pk. So when you prove these theorems, you will see, you could see that we assume that there is a probability distribution P1, P2, Pk, like the way we proved it. So here you'll just see that there is, we didn't assume that what are the values of P1, P2, Pk. We just assume that there is some P1, P2, Pk in all the theorems which we proved for proving the optimality of Hoffman. I think it is here. Yeah, I mean, yeah. So here, when we are solving a problem, this is given to us. These probabilities are given to us. These probabilities are given to us. But when we are proving the theorem, those are not given to us. This is, yeah, you can see here, these are all like pk. We assume that is pk. So whatever p is there, I don't know. I mean, whatever it is, yeah, we don't know. So it is not for a specific pk, but whenever a problem is given to you, that is for a specific distribution. That means you know the values of p of a0, p of a1, p of ak minus 1, whatever the corresponding source letters are. Here, otherwise, we don't know anything. So we know only that there is a probability distribution, but we would not know the values of it. Yeah. That means we are proving a theorem. Here you see, we never assume that these are some values. So there is something, P of A1 is something. Yeah, P of AI is P of AK. These are some values. But we don't know what are those values. Yeah. Okay. I don't know like how it is vanished from here. I mean, there is no process of saving it. I never saved it anywhere. Whatever I write here, it stays. I don't know what is that. Yeah, we proved this first. That is let's see. I mean, this is a nice theorem.
Sometimes there is a limit on the number of pages. After that, it won't store, I think.
Oh, I see. That may be. Oh, then I have to delete this file maybe.
Or yes.
Okay. Okay, that may be the case because here theorem is written, but there is no statement written. So I think we discussed that. Okay, maybe I'll repeat just the statement. If you want to see the proof, that is there in the video, so you can check that. Okay, so yeah. So what we proved actually proved 3 theorems, and the okay. So I think whether the channel is there a system or not. The picture of the communication system. That is also not here. I didn't save it yesterday also. Like I didn't download it from here. Okay, maybe I have to write it again. Yeah, I can write it again and I explain. Not a problem. I mean, I can draw the what is called this communication system, and I can. So basically, what we discussed it, we talked about this communication system. So you have like here you have a, let's say, information source. Okay. And then we looked at this communication system as like you have, let's say, the variable is u here. Okay, the variable is u here, and then we generated, let's say, a sequence of this u1, u2, let's say ul of length l. So basically what we are doing is here we are picking L, capital L symbols, okay, out of whatever the symbols are there. Let's say the symbols are like a1, a2, some ak, okay, it is there, and we are constructing a sequence. So this is a random variable, which we denoted as u bar L, which is L copies of u itself. We had written it as like this, u1, u2, ul. So then for one relation of this could be just u1. For u1 it's a small u1, and for ul it's this. So this is our input. So this is the source symbols. It's a sequence of, so it's a sequence of source symbols. Okay, and then we said, okay, there is an encoder. Okay, so here there is an encoder which will encode this. You can assume that it is binary or whatever it is. So there is an encoder, and then for each of this E1, okay, E1 could be, let's say, A5, A6, whatever it is. Okay, some UL. I mean, we gave an example also, like whenever you write a word in English, let's say, okay, then there are 26 alphabets, let's say A1, A to Z. Forget about which one is capital, which is small. let's say, so when you pick a word, so there are, let's say, I think, okay, so let's say the word is information. Okay, so in that case, so we are picking information. We are picking a bunch of source letters. That is how it is done. Okay, and then let's say you want to send this. You want, so I here is, let's say, U1, N here is U2, and dot 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 last N is some UL. Okay, so yeah, so here the value of L will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So yeah, you do that. Now what you want to do, encoder, the job of encoder is like it will produce a sequence of 0 ones corresponding to this U1, U2, UL based on your method. Okay, it will generate something. Then as a whole, you also code word for U1, code word for U2, dot 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 code word for UL. So you'll get a huge sequence of 0 1. So the huge number of bits, you can say like that. Okay, bits mean here a binary digit like 0 or 1. So depending on the length of the code word of each of these source symbol, let's say 182 UL, we'll get a very big length, okay, sequence of 0 1. Then what I was saying, that since you want to transmit it through a channel, all this entire thing, and you cannot, maybe there is a limit, there may be a limitation that you cannot send, or you cannot transmit all the bits corresponding to the word information, okay, all together. Okay, there is a limit. You cannot do that. Let's say that there is something like, okay, you can send 100 bits or maybe 10 bits. Okay, so all together you cannot send all the bits corresponding to the entire U1, U2, UL. Okay, then what we do is, okay, we set here, we assume another variable. So let's say it is another random variable x, which is, let's say, x1, x2, some xn. Okay, so the variable, the random variable corresponding to this like x, you can say xn or x bar n, which is like x1, x2, xn, such that, so first time you send x1, let's say x1, this is also a bunch of 0 ones. Then you send x2, then so you n times, capital N times you use the channel. So n number of uses of the channel. So in order to transmit that information from encoder to the decoder, let's say. So once you do that, then the channel here, you through the channel, you pass through the channel, then here you have this decoder. Okay, but since it is passing through channel, so it may be different from the channel input. So this is what we call channel input. So channel input, and then definitely you will get n number of strings, let's say. So you'll do like y1, y2, some yn, you will get something. Okay, for xi you'll get some yi. Now, yeah, once you get that, and then again there is a decoder which will decode into a sequence of source letters, right? So here it could be some, let's say, v var, which is, let's say, v1 dot 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 now vl. Okay, and then so this is your destination. Okay, this is where it will reach destination. So then the question is whether v bar is equal to u bar or not. If v bar is equal to u bar, then this is a nice thing to do. Okay, but if there is an error occurred, okay, then you have to deal with that. So here the corresponding random variable is this. Okay, here we denote it as like y1, y2, yn, and here we have again one more random variable here, v bar l, which is v1, v2, let's say vl. And then we observe that, okay, so y bar to the power n, this one is independent of u bar l given x bar n, because y bar n does not depend on u bar l directly, but it only depends on x bar n. There can be a problem with the encoder also. Okay, so but y bar n does not consider that. Okay, so y bar n only depends on x bar n. Okay, so y bar and u bar, they are independent. Similarly, you can say v bar. Okay, v bar and u bar, they are also independent given x bar and y bar. Okay, so this is what we discussed, and we said what is called the probability of error. We introduced two concepts, which one is like, forget about the sequences, all the sequences. Suppose you want to send only one symbol, so value of capital L is equal to 1, let's say. Okay, then what is happening here is that you have this u here there is a V. So you send some AI, you get some BJ, and suppose BJ is not equal to AI. Then there is a probability of error. But since probability of error we have defined P as, I mean, we denoted it as PE, and we said okay, it is can be defined using the joint, let's say XI, Y, whatever. Yeah, I think last day we denoted it as some X and Y. Okay, here also we can read like this. Okay, now let's say AI is not equal to BJ over all I. So so then this is the probability of error. Okay, so probability of error is nothing but the sum of all this. And then we said, okay, once we have this notion of probability of error, then for two random variables u and v, then we can talk about probability of error for this sequence of random variables like u bar l and v bar l. And then we said how to define it. We said, okay, this is the arithmetic mean of u PE. So meaning we said we denote it as PE, okay, in this symbol. So that is the, and this is what I mean notation for this. This is arithmetic average, meaning L, and then you take sum PEL, and this L equal to 1 to L. So what is the meaning of this PEL? So this is the error corresponding to UL and VL. So for this particular random variable, because for this I have the definition of this. So now I am introducing this L one more. I'm introducing one more index here L in order to say like, okay, this PEL, this is the product of error corresponding to the LS random variables UL and VL. And remember that our source was memoryless. So U1 is independent of U2. U2 is independent. So UI and UJ, they are all independent. So this error will not depend on anything else. So it is a memoryless channel as well as it is a memoryless source. So it will not independent. It is independent of anything else. So it should be UL and VL. So the error between these two. So this is just the pair of random variables. Okay. So using that, okay, this is the same as this one. Here it was like you can say UV, and then UL is a copy of U, and VL is a copy of V. So yeah, so then we have this. This is what is called arithmetic mean. Just take the sum and divide it by number. So the arithmetic mean, and then yeah, and then we proved two interesting theorems. First of all, we proved a theorem in order to give a bound for the error. So what we said that this is the, I think this was the statement of the theorem. So when we have two random variables u and another random variable v, okay, so then what can I say about this value, the probability of error? Can I give a bound? And this bound we proved that this bound is like this, log of, I think it was k minus 1. K is the number of source symbols here, plus entropy of PE, because PE we can always calculate, because if we know this probability distribution, joint probability distribution, then we know everything. Okay, so we can calculate what is PE. So this is always bigger equal to, we said this always bigger equal to entropy of this. And I think I forgot to mention that this is what is called Fanon's lemma. So there is a problem, the last problem in the assignment C, assignment, you will see that there is last question is state and give an interpretation. Okay, I also interpreted this result, but just to recall, because I did not say that this is called Fanon's lemma, this is a very important lemma, because of this lemma we proved the next results. Okay, so this is very fundamental. So then the probability of error, okay, so you can consider this as a function, okay, function of the probability of error. So this is bigger equal to this. Okay, then what is the meaning of this? Okay, this is what the question is in the assignment. I talked about it last day, and then we generalize this. Result. Okay, when we have a sequence of letters, source letters. So instead of UV, so let's say we have U bar L and V bar L, and then we can talk about some function of the average error. Okay, so this one. Okay, so this arithmetic mean. So and then we prove that, okay, so if this is the case, then we'll have this probability of error, this average, and then log of k minus 1 plus entropy of this P, okay, will be bigger equal to 1 by L and entropy of UL and VL. So this is what this is a bound. So you can also consider this as a function of the average probability of error. So these two things we proved, and using these two things, we proved the big theorem, which is called this data processing theorem. So we proved the data processing theorem. Okay, and I mean, I thought of asking you what is the meaning of this data processing theorem, but then there was 10 problems I already had given. But you can think about it. Okay, everything I'll not get time to discuss. But the data processing theorem is like, okay, so now you look at the picture. Okay, so now I want to give a meaning to this capital N and capital L. Okay, here in this picture, this capital L and capital N. So there are two random variables here, U bar L, X bar N. Okay, before passing through the channel. Okay, then question is how they are related. What is the mutual information between these two, the source and the destination, and here the input, channel input and the channel output. So there is a mutual information here because Y bar directly depends on X bar. V bar is the output of the initial input. So of course, then I can talk about what is the mutual information between U bar L and V bar L. And then we proved that, okay, whether it will decrease or not. Well, that is the main concern here. So we proved that, okay, that the average mutual information of U bar and V bar is less equal to average mutual information of X bar N and Y bar N. So these are the things which we proved last day. Now let us start. Okay, let us start. Okay, so using these theorems, like these theorems, we can now talk about the converse of the source coding theorem. Sorry, not the source coding, but the channel coding theorem. Okay, so informally, what we said, what is a channel coding theorem? So we said, okay, so because there is a chance of error, so we want to minimize the chance of error, right? Probability of E, whether it is small or not, this is what we wanted to guarantee. And we said that this channel coding theorem states that if the source entropy, okay, is less than equal to the channel entropy per unit time, I'll talk about that today. What do I mean by per unit time? Okay, then the probability of error will go to 0. So there will almost no probability of error. Okay, yeah. So before we do that, so let us recall this results, and from these results, what we can see here is the following. Now, see here we have this probability of E. I mean the average error, and then log of, let's say, k minus 1 plus the entropy of this PE. Okay, so this is of course 1 by L. Yeah, I'm just writing down this 1 by L H of U bar L, H of U bar L given V bar L. Now this, I mean, if you just write, so this is like a conditional entropy. U bar L is a random variable, V bar L is a random variable. Then we know the formula of writing entropy, conditional entropy in terms of mutual information. So which is 1 by L is anyway is a constant. So this is H of, you can say, U bar L minus 1 by L mutual information of U bar L and V bar L. Now here again we proved that this is bigger equal to this. So I mean here, this is less equal to this. So minus of this is bigger equal to that. So here if we apply that, so this will be bigger equal to 1 by L H U bar L minus 1 by L this I of xn x bar n and Y bar n because of the above theorems. Okay. Now we also proved, okay, we also know that I of x bar n, Y bar n, this is less equal to n times the channel capacity. This also we proved. Proof was very simple. So then if I use this here, so what do I get? So then what we have basically, we have probability of error log of I think k minus 1 plus entropy of this PE is bigger equal to 1 by L H of U bar L L minus n by L, okay, times C. Now here is the question, n by L you see here. So n times you want to see, n times you want to use the channel, and what is the length of your source sequence? It was L because you were choosing L number of, capital L number of, let's say capital L number of source letters. Okay, so now here this ratio is very, very important now. So then, because whether this is bigger equal to this number, whether it will go to 0 or not, this is the question now, whether this will go to 0 or not, or whether it will be positive bigger than some, or strictly bigger than 0 or not. So that is the question now, because this is sometimes, I mean, you can assume like this is some function of the probability of error. We want to minimize this quantity. Okay, so there is a role of n by L here. Okay, so now here is a note in order to interpret this n by L. Okay, so let's say so how do I mean let's say, let me write it like the relation between n and L. Okay, so what is that? Let's say between each source letter, so you choose U1, U2 dot 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 UL. Okay, so between this each source letter, before you choose U1 and then you choose U2. Okay, but the time gap between this, and then you say, let's say U3, then there is a time gap between this. So let's say this time interval, okay, between the source letters or two consecutive source letters. Okay, let's say it is some TS. S stands for source. Okay, and then you have a x1, x2, xn also. Okay, so there will also be a time interval, because first time you'll send x1, then second time you'll say x2, and so on. Okay, so x1, and then there will be a time gap x2, and there will be a time gap again s3, and so on. So let's say, let me denote the time interval. Okay, between the channel letters, let's say. Okay, channel means the input, channel input letters, input for the channel input letters is, let's say, some TC. C stands for channel. Okay, now you make an assumption that, let's say, the number of uses of the channel is capital N. Okay, is of the channel, let's say it permitted is, let's say, N, which is equal to, let's say, this floor function of this L TS by TC. The floor function, okay, where this floor function, let's say some value here, some x, let's say. Is this what? This is the largest integer. Okay, less than or equal to x. So let us assume now, so because each time between this is TS and this is TN, so basically what I'm trying to tell you is now N and N by L, let's say this is approximately equal to this, or you can say equal to this TS by TC. Okay, so what is happening here? N is, you can, as okay, so there are many things, but here let us assume that N need not be equal to L, and N could be actually bigger than L. Okay, that without loss of generality you can assume. Okay, now there is a time gap between the source letter, and there is a time gap between the channel input letters. Okay, now what we are assuming that the ratio between this, okay, between that time, let's say it is approximately equal to N by L. Then what is happening is, now I'll state the converse of the coding theorem. Okay. So let us say that this is the case, then what will happen? This is converse of the channel coding theorem. So what we want to prove here is that if the source entropy is more than the channel capacity per unit time, then the probability of error is positive. Okay, this is the converse. So you cannot do that. So there is always an error. So suppose, okay, suppose, yeah. So I mean, okay, every time I'm writing this, but the same assumption, we can assume that suppose we have, let's say k letters, k source letters. Okay. And entropy, now I am defining entropy. I'm denoting it as infinity. I'll tell you what is that. This U is the information source here. Is limit L goes to infinity 1 by L H of UL, U bar L. Okay, so this is how I'm writing it. This number is this one. So why I'm writing it? Because I'll not stop sending the letters, right? I'll keep on sending the letters as long as my system is working. Okay, so L can be very, very large. So this number, if L is very, very large, this right hand side, whatever this value is, I'm writing this as a number. Okay, this guy as a number. So this will give me a value when L is very, very large. So I'm sending a lot of sequences of letters. Okay, L is very, very large. So if I do that, and let us assume that this is this. Okay, and let's say this is one thing, and let's say the source letters are produced, let's say, at a rate. So rate, let's say some TS seconds, let's say. So you produce a letter with time, let's say TS. It could be very, very small number. Okay. And so this is about the source. And then suppose we have a discrete memory less channel with capacity C and the rate of one, let's say letter means one input, channel input letter. Channel input letter is, let's say, some TC seconds. Okay. Now the statement of the theorem is, okay, if the source sequence of length L, so everything we discussed, we are just writing it down. If this R source sequence of this is connected to the destination through n uses or n number of uses of channel, where n by L is equal to, let's say this, TS by TC. Okay, then, okay, probability of error satisfies this. Bigger equal to H infinity U minus TS by TC. times C. So whatever we have got here, we are writing this. So here we had written it N by L C, but L could be large. So if we write L could be large, then I'm just introducing a new notation, which is H infinity. Okay. So that's it. This is what is the source coding theorem. So a channel coding theorem, sorry. So then the probability of error will give you this one. Now the question is, what is this and what is this? Okay. So what is the meaning of that? So when this will be positive, okay, so this will depend on two things. One is the time gap, I mean the time ratio. Another is the channel capacity, as well as whether this guy is the, okay, this is I think U bar L. So this guy is what? This guy is nothing but okay, I'm denoting it as H infinity U, so I'm not writing as that. I'm just denoting it as H infinity U, so there is no L here. Okay, so this guy is what? This is the entropy of this channel. Now, if C is, for example, suppose channel capacity is 0, let us say, then this guy will definitely, the error, this error will depend, the function of this error will depend only on the entropy. Or you can say, if time gap is very, very small, or let's say this is almost equal, TS is almost exactly equal to TC, okay, then the error function is bigger equal to the channel capacity, the difference of channel capacity and the source entropy. And if source entropy is bigger than channel capacity, then this is always positive. When L is large, that means that is the lifetime or your entire communication system. So if the time gap is almost equal, the source letter, so there is a factor of time here, okay, how it is produced. If this value is 1, then if C is less than the entropy, okay, then this is always, you can say it is positive. Okay, this is what is the what is called converse of the channel capacity theorem. Okay. Yeah. Now
Sir,
what we'll do is.
Sir, can you please repeat this one? The last expression.
Yeah. So what we are saying there is what is the channel capacity theorem? Sorry, Shannon's channel coding theorem. So what we said is the probability of error can be arbitrarily small if source entropy is less than channel capacity, right? And the opposite of the converse of that is if entropy, source entropy per unit time. Okay, so this TS and TC, this is per unit time, like the time between the two generation of two source symbols and two input channel input letters. Okay, so if they are same, let's say per unit time is suppose they are same, then what I'm saying is this error function is bigger equal to H infinity U minus C. H infinity U you can assume like it is the entropy of the entire random variable where L is infinite, means you are sending a very large length of source letters, okay, because it is the entire lifetime, let's say. Then if that is the case, so if this is bigger than C, if this entropy is bigger than C, then the left hand side, the function of error will take always positive value. So that means the error will always be there. But if C is this channel capacity, okay, if C is bigger than H infinity U, then it is bigger equal to minus a negative number. Minus, so it need not be positive. So that can be really, really small. That is what it will be positive only when, let's say, H infinity U is bigger than the channel capacity per unit time, because TC and TS by TC, there is also a factor of TS and TC, the ratio of the channel, ratio of the time interval. But so yeah, so this will always be positive when entropy is more than the channel capacity. So your goal will be, after this theorem, the conclusion is, if you, so your goal will be to make the source capacity, source entropy, okay, this H infinity U, that has to be less than C, the channel capacity. then only this can be made small. The error can be made small. If you make it more than the channel capacity, the entropy is more than the channel capacity, then there is always positive probability of error. Yeah, this is what I meant.
Sir, actually, I have two doubts in this particular expression. One is why we replaced n by L by time. So what is the significance?
So, no, significance is, suppose, okay, so let us say, you can always, I mean, this is a nice question. Suppose let us always, you can send, let's say, each symbol, let's say you have a source letter, okay, U1, U2, UL, and you only can send through the channel each source letter, the code word corresponding to each source letter one time. Then you will make it, make this L number of users of the channel. And each time you are sending only one source letter. That could happen. But that need not happen also, but that could happen. So what I'm saying is, N by L, if that is the ratio of the time gap, time interval gap, because you want to send basically the L source letters, right? In that to the destination. But in between, there is n number of letters also. I mean, the input letters also, channel input letters also. So this ratio of n and L, that should be some fixed number. And I'm saying this fixed number, this ratio, is approximately equal to, or it maybe it is equal to the, what is called this, or maybe you can, if you this, you can just, you can say this is L is here. Okay, that is not a problem. L is here. So n number of channel users is L times the time gap. This is what I'm trying to tell you. L times the time gap. So because depending on the time gap, you want to send, let's say, L, UL to VL. Okay. Now in between there is XN to YN. So whatever you are sending this L source letter, sequence of L source letter, in between there is n number of channel users. So this n number of channel users, each source, there is a time gap between producing source letter. There is a time gap between sending of two channel letters, input channel letters. If they are approximately same, okay, then you can set at a strength like the when you finish creating the source letter, you also finish transmitting it through the channel. Otherwise, there will be a time gap, and that will be the ratio between n by L, and that will given by the time gap between the producer of the source letter and the input channel input letters. So there is a time, it will take a time, let's say L times TS. Okay, for each source letter, suppose you need TS second, let's say 1 second. So you need L seconds for producing the source letters. Now you want to send the input channel letters also. So once you produce this U1, let's say, and there is X1, let's say X1 and U1, they are like equal, like X1 is the code word for the U1. X2 is the code one for the U2. Then N will be equal to L. Otherwise, what will happen is there is a time gap, meaning there's a time gap between production of the source letter and the transmission time between these input source letters. I mean the input channel letters. So N has to depend on L, how it is produced, and then it will send. Once it is produced, the source letter, then it will be encoded and then it will be sent through the channel. So there is a time gap between the transmission of two different channel input letters, and there is also a time gap between the produce of two source letters in the sequence. So that they will depend on the ratio, that how much time gap is there. Did I make any sense?
Yes, sir. Actually, I understand like what you're trying to say. Yes, like
Yeah.
there are two stages of time. One is from conversion to source to you mean UIs to XIs, and there is another time that is corresponding to sending time of XI, right?
No.
Then
I'm saying when you construct the sequence U1, UT, UL.
yes.
So once you write, let's say you write a letter, you write a word, okay? So if you ask anything to write, so suppose you write a message, you type a message in WhatsApp. So there is a time gap when you are writing this. There is a time gap between these two letters. Suppose you write have. So you first write H and then you write A, then V, then E. So there is a time gap between the source letters when you produce the source letter. Now when it will be sent, there is also a time gap. So these two time gaps must be somehow related, and that has to be related based on how many source letters you are producing and how many channel input letters you are sending.
Yes, sir, I have understood this one. But still, sir, my doubt is persistent. Like if we replace, yes, I understood that this n by L will be approximately equal to TS by TC. But my doubt is like if instead of writing so what new thing this is adding? Like in this expression, if we write n by L instead of TS by TC,
Yeah.
then it
So
won't change anything. Like the error
no,
will be
it won't
reduced.
change any. It won't change anything about the error. But what I'm saying is the error depends on this fact, the time gap. So
Yes, sir.
this depends on this. If they're same, the time gap is almost same, let's say, then it only depends on the channel capacity and the entropy. Otherwise, there will be an effect. So you can have a communication. So this will give you a way to design a good communication system. So suppose you want to design a communication system, then what kind of features it should have? So you have to set a goal. Whenever you design something, some hardware, okay, something which is artificial, which is hardware, okay. So then you have a certain goal to achieve, right? So a list of goals. So then what you want to do, you should have this kind of a thing, like the entropy should be less than the channel capacity. When this time gap is fixed, time gap is let's almost equal. So basically what we'll discuss this also later on when we'll talk about block coding. But let us say it like N and L should be almost equal. That means you are sending that. Even if it is not equal, that is not a problem. You can adjust this time gap and then you can say that entropy should be less than this time factor, time ratio times the capacity of the channel.
Okay, sir.
Okay. Okay. So now, yeah.
And on the left hand side, we have an expression in terms of probability, error probability.
Yeah, yeah.
So, but the thing is, you are saying like when the capacity. So we are trying to. So there is a bound from below. So when this thing is maybe greater than equal to 0, then we can assure that there is always an error. But once it is, but certainly it is a lower bound. It still can't assure uh, there is a possibility, but there is no assurance, right?
Yep. What is possibility? What is that possibility?
So what I'm saying here is once the right hand side of the expression is greater than 0, then certainly there will be an error. But once it is negative, still we cannot assure that it is.
So probability of error will be close to 0 then. So this number is actually positive, or we can say non-negative because everything is non-negative here. Okay.
Yes, sir.
And now you are saying this number is bigger equal to some negative number. It is not bigger equal to some fixed number. Let's say it is not bigger equal to 0.1 or 0.01. That means it is achieving the value to close to 0. If it is bigger than 0.1, you know surely that it is positive, or bigger than any positive, small positive number, then it is always positive. If it is negative, because you are calculating this, it is supposed to be bigger than 0, left hand side. Now here, what you are giving the bound is bigger equal to some negative number. So that means that that means it is very close to 0. It is very close to 0.
No, sir.
And
but how we can assure that? Because if say suppose right hand side become -1, 2 is still greater than -1, but is not close to 0. So like there is a possibility that it can be close to 0, but we cannot assure that it is diminishing.
No. Forget about mathematics. So you can always say that. You can say like some value is 5 and I'm giving you a bound -5. So it does not mean that it is bigger equal to, let's say if I say -5, it does not mean that it is also less equal to 5, right? That is true. But here what is happening is this guy is positive only if and only if H infinity, so see the conclusion, H infinity U is bigger than Ts by Tc times C. Otherwise it is always negative. But this left hand side is always positive. So then what I'm saying is, since this value is always close to 0, then if my channel capacity is more than the entropy, then their chance will be the error function will be very, very small, because then it is not bigger than any epsilon, which is positive. So this guy is positive only when this guy is smaller than this entropy. But what I'm saying, the channel coding theorem says what? If entropy is less than the channel capacity, let's say, then it is always negative number. It is never positive. That means probability of error can never be positive. But probability of error is a positive number or a non-negative number. Then I will say what? It is approximately close to 0. But mathematically, if I just say that some number is bigger than -5, of course, it does not mean that it is also less than 1 or less than 5, right? It doesn't mean that. But here in this expression, it follows that this right hand side is never positive if H infinity U is less than, let's say, Ts by Tc times C. So it is never positive because it is a negative number. So it is not bigger than any positive number.
Oh, okay, sir.
Okay. Okay. So now I think we have spent a lot of time. Now we'll, so because I had a plan to do some calculation today, but I don't know how much. Anyway, so now what we'll do is we have seen these things. Okay, this is all fine. So then the first question is, if I give a channel, how do you calculate its channel capacity? That is itself a problem. If I know the channel capacity, if I know the entropy, I can of course compute. We know the formula, but the channel, finding the channel capacity, given the transition probabilities, that when given the channel, okay, if I define a channel, then how do I get this value of the channel capacity? Because this is an optimization problem and it could be a challenging problem. Okay, then the question is, how do I, even I ask this question to you, how do I know even that it exists? Because it's a maximum of something, right? Recall. So now we'll talk about how to calculate channel capacity. Recall that C is like max. Okay, I don't remember how I wrote it, but it is just like over Px. I think this is how I wrote it. Okay, so over all possible probabilities of the source letters, okay, for which the maximum value of this mutual information, that is what is the channel capacity. But this is an optimization problem. And what is the constant here? Constant is this one. So constant here is a set, okay, set of probability vectors. If you remember, we talked about this thing long back. We talked about what is called a convex set, and we said also that this will give you a mathematical structure, set of all probability vectors. Okay, let me just recall 2 minutes. Let me just say you have, let's say, A1, A2, AK. These are the source letters. Source letters. Now, once you have that, you always have a probability of A1, probability of A2, probability of AK. So you can construct a vector. Okay, PA1, PA2, PAK. Now, what are the properties of this vector? Here you see P of AI is always bigger. So this is a non-negative vector. Okay, and sum of this equal to 1. Equal to 1. I equal to 1 to K. So then we can treat this probability vectors as a set. Okay, and we had seen that this is a convex set. So then what is this set? This is, let's say we have K. So this is, you can say like all vectors, let's say V, not vector V, but what kind of symbol I'll use? Okay, let me write V arrow. Okay, this is in R to the power K plus. So entries are this such that, so V bar I, sum of this equal to 1, I equal to 1 to K. So this is the set. So if you have like, if K equal to 2, so that means you have only 2 source letters. Okay, then you can draw this picture. Okay, this is, let's say, some V1 and this is, let's say, some V2. Then what is V1 plus V2 equal to 1? This is this one. Okay, V1 plus. So here any point, okay, can be a probability. Any point can be a probability because any point here is some V1 probability of, let's say, V1. I mean not V1, but probability of, let's say, A1. So this point, let's say it is one P of, or you can write it as a column. It is probability of, let's say, A1 and probability of A2. Again, here you can call this as some value here, some value here. For here, it is some value here, some value here. So here it is again some vector, probability of A1, probability of A2, and so on. So this is a set of all probability vectors. And in fact, this set is a convex set. Okay. Then the question will be, if I want to solve this optimization problem, I know that the constant set means all this Px. Okay. This will be that set of all probability vectors. So the feasible region is a convex set, you can say, or the constant is convex set. Then the question is what kind of function it is. I want to optimize a function over a convex set. Okay, then how do I do it? So one way to do it is first check whether this is also a convex function or not. Convex function of what? Convex function of Px or not. Okay, if that is also a convex function, then this becomes the convex optimization problem. So the region, the constant set, okay, is a convex set and the function is also a convex function. Then how do we do it? Okay, even if you don't want to do that, let's say, okay, by the way, can anybody say how to prove that this will be a convex set? Let's say this is some set C, or not C, C is the channel capacity. So some S. Then how do you show that this is a convex set? Probability vectors, this will form a convex set. How do you show that?
We can pick two arbitrary numbers and we will show that every convex linear combination will sit inside the set.
Yeah, so you can show that. So this is a homework. Okay, that this will become a convex set. I'm not proving that. You can just try to prove that. And okay, this is the first thing. And suppose I want to prove that this function ix, the mutual information as a function, okay, when the parameter is my probability vectors, that means the probability distribution of the input symbols or the source symbols, okay, or source letters. So I want to show that this is a convex function. This is what I want to show. I'll not give all the proofs here. Okay, it will take a lot of time. So if you are interested about the proofs, you can follow this Thomas and Thor's book or any other book. Okay, information theory. Any book will give contain these results. Okay, these are very fundamental results. So just to recall, what is a convex function? Okay, there are two kinds of convex. I mean, there is a relation between convex and concave. Okay. So, I mean, I'll just say, because we discussed before, I'm just recalling, I'll just give you the picture. Let's say, okay, so the definition of what is called the convex is like what? So suppose we have a function, okay, which is real valued, let's say, real valued function. Okay, defined on some r to the power k or something, or defined on, let's say some s, something like that here, s, depend on s. Okay, then when do you say it is convex? If f of, let's say, any two points you pick, so let's say some lambda, how do I pick it? U bar, u arrow, let's say, plus 1 minus lambda b arrow. This is less equal to lambda f of u bar, u arrow plus 1 minus lambda f of v bar. This is what is called convex function. Okay, then the function is called convex. So what is the meaning of that? Okay, what is the meaning of that? So let's say this is some lambda. Lambda is varying from 0 to 1. Let's say this is my 0. This is my 1. Then what do I mean by this? When for any lambda, this condition has to be satisfied. Okay. So then two things are important. One is this and another one is this. So there is some value here. Okay. Some, let's say some f of this number, f of u, f of v, whatever it is. So, and this number, by the way, this is somewhere depending on lambda. Okay. There is a value of this. So there is a value here, let's say. So there will be a curve, let's say. Okay. So curve could be like this. Okay. Let's say I'll write it this, but doesn't matter. Okay. It could be anything. So let me write that this is the function of this value depending on what lambda is. So lambda of u bar plus 1 minus lambda of u bar. Okay. Then this has to be less equal to this one. So this is nothing but a straight line, the line segment joining these two points, f of u bar and v of u bar. So there is y-axis. There is a y-axis, but it will take the functional values. So here, let's say there is f of something, u bar or v bar, doesn't matter which one ever it is. And let's say this is some f of some v bar. So then this is the line. Okay, this is the line. So it is like that. So the functional value is less equal to the value on the line. Okay, corresponding to each lambda. Take a lambda, then there will be something like that here. So that is kind of a convex function. But if there is a convex function, there is also a notion of concave. So concave function is like it, instead of less equal to, this will be bigger equal to. So the picture will be like instead of that. So this will be like, okay, let me write it in different. So in this, and then that will be like this. Okay, so this is concave and this is convex. Okay, and how these are related? Let's say if one is convex, then minus times that is concave. This is always true, right? You are flipping the coin, flipping the curve. So yeah, so yeah, let me just write it down here. Maybe. So I mean, it doesn't matter whether my optimization, the objective function of the optimization problem is concave or convex. If I have a convex function, I can always make, if I want to maximize it, then I can always minimize the concave function if my maximization problem was a convex function. And if it is concave, then I can replace the minus as minimization problems. So if let's say f, the function is concave, then minus of f, okay, minus of f means the minus values of the fx, okay, is convex and vice versa. Okay, now before I talk about how to solve the convex optimization problem, okay, in general this is a convex function problem. So let me recall some of the properties of convex functions, which I will not prove, but if you look at any optimization book, any convex optimization book, you'll find it. There's a good book by what is his name? I mean, he has nice video lectures also, and there is a book that is a very famous book. So I forgot his name. What is it? He is a professor in Stanford. So if you write that in Google, like convex optimization book, so that book will definitely come. Maybe the first link may be that book only. I forgot the name, by the way. Yeah. So let me recall here again. Recall the properties of convex function. So first of all, I mean, because this will be using, I'll be using, let's say if f1, f2, let's say fl, okay, are concave function. Most of the time I'll give you the properties of concave functions, okay, but you can also have the same thing for convex, okay, maybe some little bit of difference with the sign, like minus and this and that. So our concave functions And let's say if some numbers, let's say C1, C2, some CL are let's say positive numbers, okay, then let's say everything is 0, then there is a problem. Then this L, CL, and FL at any point, let's say some V, okay, then this is so, or you may just write this, I mean, instead of writing V bar, it doesn't matter. Okay, so VL, okay, oh, so this is also concave. So you can say like this non-negative linear combination of concave functions is also concave in one line, is also concave. And yeah, so, and if all these functions are strictly concave, means this instead of bigger equal to, okay, if they are less equal to, they are strictly less than, or bigger equal to, in place of bigger equal to, they're always bigger than, then that is called strictly concave or concaves, okay, convex. So this is also concave. Yeah, so if all these individual functions I fail, they are L equal to 1 to L here. So if they are strictly concave, then this linear combination is also strictly concave. This is one property. This is also homework. And how to check whether the function is concave or not? If this is one-dimensional, yeah.
For any condition on constant CIs, like some should
No,
be
positive. I assume that they are positive. I'm not talking about convex combination. It does not have to be convex combination, if you are thinking that.
Okay.
So, so I mean, there is a sufficient condition if your function is only one-dimensional. That means this vector I'm talking about, this value is 1 only. Okay, this L I'm talking about, or K I'm talking about, this K, R to the power K. If this K is only 1, then you can just compute a derivative. Okay, if K is equal to 1, and let's say d square f, okay, dx square, if x is the variable, it is less equal to 0 everywhere in the interval. Interval means the domain, because domain has to be convex, right? In the interval, so it can be either closed or bounded, or open. So interval, okay, then f is concave, so it is less equal to 0. You mind that is concave. So you can find similar properties for convex function. Okay. And another interesting property is like, this is where this convex combination will come. So let's say if I have a vector set of vectors, a sequence of vectors v1, v2, vl, okay, the vectors which yeah, where each of these vi or vl is in S, the probability, the region, okay, which is the convex set, okay. And then, and if you take any probabilities, let's say lambda 1, lambda 2, or you can write p1, p2 dot pl, okay, pl is a set of, I'm not writing in a set symbol, but let me say a collection of, probabilities. That means basically they define a probability distribution of probabilities, or an ensemble. Also, you can write an ensemble. Is an ensemble that is PIs are bigger equal to 0, or PL are bigger equal to 0, and sum of this PL is equal to 1, L equal to 1 to L. Okay, then sum over this PL f of, let's say what is then yeah, what this VL, okay, L equal to 1 to L is also less equal to this f of this sum over PL, okay, VL. Okay, L equal to 1 to this. 1 to L. So when f is convex. So if f is a convex function, then this is also true. If you take a convex combination of, there's a convex combination, this is called a convex combination because sum of PL is equal to 1. Convex combination of the image values, and that will also be, has to be less equal to this. And you have seen probably this, if you have studied this thing, probability theory, this is called Jensen's inequality, by the way. So yeah, so it's called also Jensen inequality. Okay, so in fact, yeah, I mean, okay, let's work. So now, using these properties, we'll just check some of the fundamental properties of entropy as a function or mutual information as a function. So,
Sir,
okay, so let me, yeah.
sir, when f is convex or concave?
Oh, sorry, yeah, you're right. Concave. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. So now, using these properties, these are all homework. Okay, you can just check. I'm not going to prove all this. Using these properties, I mean, I thought that I'll show you that this can be very, very hard problem, even if my channel is very simple. So using these properties, but I don't know whether I'll be able to do that. Properties. Okay, we have the following, let's say. Following simple observations. Okay, so I'm making some simple. First of all, okay, entropy as a function. So entropy is a function of a probability vector. Okay, if you know P1, P2, some Pk is given to you, then you can say like minus of P. Okay, oh, let's say Pi log of Pi, right? What can you say about this? Is it a concave function or convex function? Say this is log is, you know what kind of function it is. Minus log, you know. Pi is a convex combination of those functions. So what can you say about this? And one line, just using these properties above. What can you say? This domain of this is a convex set. This is a set of all probability vectors, right? H is a function, entropy. So this is how it is defined. Sum of Pi log Pi. Now you know property of log Pi. I mean log x as a function, and then minus of that, and then you are taking a convex combination of that. So what do you say? Concave function. Nothing, just use these three properties. Okay, you'll get it. So yeah. So I'm not giving you the explanation. I gave you the hint. Okay. Second one. Okay. What can I say? Okay. Okay. So let me just, because that thing I cannot say right now. Okay. So what I was thinking about making a comment on this, but about in mutual information, but I cannot do it right now because I have to submit this. Okay. So suppose now you want to how to, the question here is how to compute channel capacity. So you have to solve an optimization problem. Now you can use a very naive way of solving this. Okay, how do you solve an optimization problem? What is the guess? See what? Just remember. See here is this one. Yeah, where is the channel capacity? Channel capacity is here. This is the function. So this is a real valued function, right? So now if you have, so this is the function. This is the objective function, and this is the constant. So if you have such a thing, so how do you find the optimal value, maximum value? Okay, so in general, in undergraduate level, what you do is first calculate the stationary points. Meaning you first calculate the derivative, okay? So corresponding to all this, see P1, P2, Pn or Pk here, they are variables like x1, x2, xk. Okay. So when I say this, that I want to compute C, which is max over this Px. So basically it is some P1, P2 dot 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 some Pk. And this is a function. If you write the definition of this function, okay, then there will be, if you just write down this, can anybody tell what is that? Some I, J, okay? P of you, if you just write this down, okay, something by something, if you just write this down, then you will see this P1, P2. In fact, instead of writing P1, P2, I could have written Q1, Q2, Qk. Anyway, so these are like x1, x2, xk, and this is how the function is defined. So if this function is defined and over some variable P1, P2, Pk, then what you do is you take the partial derivatives of this function, okay, with respect to P1, P2, Pk, and then you make that to be equal to 0. So what you write is, let's say my function is some f. So suppose, so you can interpret it like this, say some max pi a variable here, and let's say some function here, some let's say some p bar. So this is a p vector, okay, p bar. So if you do that, so some you can also write like p1, p2, pk here, not a problem. So this will be function of p1, p2, pk once you write that, okay. Now one way to do it, so you want to find the maximum of this function. So one way to do it is you just calculate the partial derivative of this with respect to del pi. It is pi, and that is equal to 0 for I equal to 1 to this. So then you find all the stationary points, but this will give you a linear system. Because suppose, I mean, I should not do that because you should know this. Let's say x square plus y square. Suppose, I mean, it is not x square plus y square because here it is a complicated function. So then what you do is you calculate del f del x, okay, equal to 0, equal to del f del y. And once you do that, you will get some 2x, for example. This is a very simple function, so you get something. I'll maybe add something 2xy. So then you will get something, okay. So this will give you one equation, this will give you another set of equation, and then you need to solve that system of equations to find the value of x and y. So same thing I'm saying here. So if you compute this derivative and make it to be equal to 0, then you first get all the stationary points, okay. Make all the points p1, p2 dot 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 pk, okay. Once you can do that, and there is nice thing now that if you are solving a convex optimization problem, okay, then
Sir, I have a doubt here. Like, so we also have constraint. Like it is like we look at critical points when like when we are optimizing, we have to take into consideration that we have constraints also, right?
yeah. So when you are solving this, so here you had no constant. I did not write it here, but
Okay.
suppose here you have x plus y plus. So when I say suppose this is 1, then when you are solving this values x and y, they also have to satisfy this because they have to be in the domain, right? Otherwise, how can you do that? So I did
No,
not.
so we use different method, I think, because uh,
No.
it might be the case that like via this method we are trying to find maximum over a ball for open system, whereas on x plus y there will be a maximum always.
See, you first have to find out wherever there is. I mean, I should not talk about this actually, okay? So this is like very, very undergraduate level. So anyway, so you have to first restrict your domain where there can be a possible point in the domain where you can find a optimum value. Optimum value, maximum value. Maximum value is what? It means, so it means, what is that? Yeah. So maximum is something like here. So that means locally this has to be, or maximum means what? At this point, let's say this is maximum. So this tangent around this point. So that's why I'm taking derivative equal to 0. Now the question is whether this point is in the domain of that or not. That also I have to check. So I'm saying a very naive method. There are multiple ways to solve an optimization problem. What probably you are thinking is the Lagrange multiplier problem method. Okay, instead of going to Lagrange multiplier method, you can also solve an optimization problem. You always don't have to go to that. But of course you can do that. I'll talk about it. But the thing is, you first find where this derivative is equal to 0. And this is the beauty of convex functions. Okay, if I can show that this is a convex function, that wherever there is a local maximum, it is the global maximum. So meaning it is enough to show that the derivatives are equal to 0. Okay, so that is a way for the convex function. I mean, so function first of all. Okay, so function has to, I mean, I'm assuming all these things. Okay, so this function is a differential function, let's say. Okay, defined on a convex set. Okay, and then it will be a global maximizer on this convex set. If and all there is a theorem, okay, you can study that. So okay, let me just write it so you can just find it out. I mean, so this course is not about convex optimization problems, so I'll not talk about it, but let me just write it down. Let f be a differentiable function, okay, whatever number of variable, okay, defined on a convex set, let's say S, and let's say X is a point, okay, which is in, how do I write it? Which is in, okay, let me say X is an interior point. I mean, I'm not defining here what is an interior point. So that's why I don't want to write it. An interior point, then, okay, then the following happens. If F is concave, okay, then X is a global maximizer. There are two global maximum means it is maybe there is a function wave like this. So this is, let's say, global maximum. This is a local maximum, this point. Local means around this point, this value is the maximum one. But global, if you look the entire function, then this is the global one. But what happens is for convex function, local is actually global. Okay, so there is only one such peak. Okay, so what I was saying. So then X is a global maximizer of the function f in S if and only if X is a stationary point. Same thing is true when f is convex, then it will be, instead of global maximizer, it will be global minimizer. So I'm doing everything in terms of concave. There is a reason, okay? Because I need to show whether this function is this average mutual information, whether that is concave or convex, right? What I was writing is a stationary point, meaning stationary point of this f. That is what? F dash is 0. F dash at that whatever the domain pi here, right? Pi is equal to 0. For convex, if you replace the convex, then you have to replace this by minimizer, because minus of that. So if it is maximum, then it will be minimum. So for convex, you have an advantage. Okay. Yeah. Sorry. Concave, there is an advantage, but it has to be convex set. So this S has to be convex set. Okay. So yeah, this is one way to show it. Otherwise, you can use your what is called Lagrange multiplier. Okay. So let me not discuss Lagrange multiplier. I think you must know that. And then I'll make just two conclusions, because today I think it is not possible. So this I'm not going to prove it. You can, the proof is very, very simple. It is not difficult. So that's why I'm leaving this. So okay, for a discrete memoryless channel, okay, with let's say K source symbol. I mean, all whatever the setup is there, source letters, okay, letters, and let's say J output letters with transition probability is what? Probability is P of, let's say, J given K. Okay. Here you can say J is up to from this to this, and K is from this to this. Okay. Now let Q be the probability distribution function. Okay, distribution function means what? Okay, I will tell you. Probability distribution function for the, this is function. Okay, function for the source letters. Then what do I have? I'm just writing it down just to recall how it is depending on this thing, the probability distribution. So if you just recall, I think this was some J, K, Q, K, yeah, P, J given K. Yeah, this is your function, log P, J given K. And then what was that? Okay, I can write it because this K, there will be problem. So yeah, so Q, it's I think I wrote it before also. I'm just recalling this. I equal to 1 to K. So I'm not writing QK here because this depends on K, then you will assume this is a constant, by the way, in the denominator. But there is a QK here because there is a conditional term here in the numerator. Then this is a concave function of this Q. So the input source we have, the input source letters, okay, the probability space, the probability set of probability vectors, which is a convex set. Okay, if you put that as, if you keep that as the variable, then this function is a concave function over this. So that means what you are solving here, when you are solving this maximization problem, you are solving actually a convex optimization problem. Convex and concave are same. Okay, finding max means you have to find a minimum of the convex. So this is a convex optimization problem, nothing else. So that means you can have a lot of advantage of solving this. Okay, so you may just or you can use your known methods, like if you don't want to use convexity, then you can use your known Lagrange multiplier, whatever other things, whatever you want to use, you can use that. But having a convex function, the advantage is if you have this what is called this stationary point, that will give you the maximum value. Okay, another, see, this is not only, this function is not only a function of the input random variable X, but it is also a function of the transition probabilities. Okay, so this is just an additional note I want to make this theorem. So if we treat it IXY as a function of transition probabilities, let's say P J given K, okay, for a fix. So once you fix for a fix Q, so there are two things happening. Okay, so this is here, this is here. There is P. Okay, this P is on, or let's say Q. There's Q, which is a probability distribution on the source letters, and there is P Y given X or J given K, which is the tangential probabilities. Now this is X, this is Y. Now the average mutual information that depends on both Q and PY given X. So see, it depends on both. Okay, this expression depends on both. Now what I'm saying is, if you fix the channel and vary Q, that is my optimization problem. Channel is fixed because I'm computing the channel capacity. This transition probabilities are fixed. I'm varying Q and I'm trying to find out the maximum value. I can do it other way also. Meaning I just want to look at, what happens if I fix my Q and vary my transition probabilities. Then what kind of function is that average mutual information? Okay. Then if I do this, then this I XY is a convex function. convex function of Pyx or Pjk. So this mutual average mutual information is a convex function when the convex function of the transition probabilities when this input distribution the distribution of the input and input random variable is fixed, and it is concave when channel is fixed but you are varying the input random variable, that probability distribution of the input random variable, then it is a concave function. And now your job will be how to use this tool of convex function, okay, for finding out the capacity of the channel. So there will be a question regarding this definitely in the exam, how to compute. I think there is also a problem. I think there are two problems already in the assignment, how to compute this, but those problems are simple problems, okay? I mean, similar kind of problems will be there in the exam, so not very hard. But this problem, I mean, in general could be hard. That's why I wanted to show you. Maybe I'll show you tomorrow that this problem in general, if you do not use the convexity, okay, if you use the convexity, then it will be a little simpler in some cases. But if you do not use the convexity or concavity property of the information, mutual information, average mutual information function, then it could be a really challenging problem. Okay, finding channel capacity of different kinds of channel. So I'll maybe talk about channel capacity of 2-3 channels. Then for other channels, you can read the book and you can see what how to compute this channel capacity of other standard channels, let's say. Yeah, I'll stop here. So if you have any doubt, you can ask me now.